Welcome to What's the Effie?
What the Effie?
Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome. Today is a super duper special day because I have a super duper special guest. I have Molly Tennant with us today, and I am so happy. I feel like I'm up off the ground. Molly, thank you very much for coming.
You're so sweet. You know what's funny is when you get to this point where you've been in a community where people recognize you. I mean, even other people within this community probably have the same, like Effie, I'm sure when you go out, people are like, Effie, oh my gosh. You know, like they hear about you, they see you in the groups, you're always talking about things. You, especially as a community leader, are always like giving insight to other people and giving your opinion, whether people like it or not, right? Like they always, and I freaking love that about you so much. And so people recognize you when you go out, and it is really interesting to me to feel that, you know, like when you go places,
thank you.
Like Effie's so excited over me. I'm like, I'm excited over Effie. What do you mean?
I'm paying Maggie to say these things. Maggie's writing nice things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyways, all right.
Hey,
Well, hey, Sabrina, how are you? Well, I am super stoked, and thank you for the kind words.
Mm-hmm.
I would like for our audience to get to know you a little bit more. Everybody adores you. We all know that you are Pace's right hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that had he someone else in your position, the entire mentorship would be different. And
It's so true. Yeah.
it is. And we love you so much. So I want to say thank you for being who you are and being there. But I would love to get into a little bit about you as a person. So I would like to start with childhood.
Yeah.
What were you like as a child? Did you ride horses when you were a kid?
I did. You know, I always tell people I was like total weird little ADHD kid. I wasn't like super popular. I had a late bloomer growth spurt. Like I was just kind of an awkward little kid. But I think that really allowed me to kind of, when you're not popular growing up as a kid, I feel like it kind of humbles you in a way that being popular probably once you become an adult, that humbles you because you realize that people don't really give a crap about who you were in school once you're out of school. Right. Whereas I had the other experience where it was like, I struggled in school. I didn't do well in school until I was in high school.
Oh, and so your elementary school years were tough for you?
It was tough. It was tough. I did, you know, I had trouble paying attention. And so what I learned through that is that each person has their own learning type. And I think it says a lot about how I teach now, how I teach in the top tier community, how I've taught within SubTo, how I interact with people and teach people. My methods or the ways that I've learned to do things is based off of how I learned to learn because I wasn't a good learner.
Interesting.
And so Jeremy says, I did great through kindergarten. So I probably did good in kindergarten. I don't remember that far back, but it was a struggle for me. And like I played sports in high school, and the first couple of years of high school, I didn't, you know, I had to sit out because there were times that I didn't have good grades, you know, like, and
really?
what I recognized was that it was all up to me. I had to decide to make the conscious effort. I had to decide to just try. And like, even though it was hard to pay attention or whatever I was struggling with at that time, I just really put my nose to the grindstone and got through my last couple of years of high school and did really, really well and got into engineering school, actually out of school.
Wow.
I
Okay,
know.
wait a minute. You went from things being hard in elementary to getting
know.
into engineering school?
I know. Yeah.
And I'll bet you went from, like you said, being a little bit not so popular. I bet you were popular in high school.
No, actually, I think what I
No?
did is I internalized. I then all of a sudden made school about school, not about trying to make friends or trying to be the most popular person or whatever, right?
Sorry, we have a crazy audience sometimes, and they're here today. We bring out all the good people.
That was the best comment ever.
I know.
And so then going back to horses, like I had horses, and so I think a lot of times when you have horses, it's kind of an obsession. It's not people either get into horses because they like are a young kid and they like horses and they're like, I want to ride horses, and they do it for like 2 months and then they're over it, or they're obsessed like I am. And so I have one of those weird horse people personalities that's like, I have 3 of them right now. I would have more if my husband would allow. And this is my window that shows my pasture to my horses are. And my horse, not at this time of day, but sometimes during when it gets like shady over here, he'll come over here and fall asleep right next to my window.
Oh,
and so this is like the ultimate dream for me. My weirdo inner horse kid is like, this is all I want. I just want an office with a window that my horse can come and fall asleep at my window. And so for me, I've made it, right? I've made it. But that really stems down to like, I learned a lot from childhood that I had to go through some difficult things. I feel like girls, especially, like you couldn't pay me to go back to junior high. How many other people here, like you could not pay me to go back to that?
What for? Yeah, but I understand what you're saying. It's interesting that I would not have thought that because you're so easy going and you're so people love you so much that I just can't imagine there would be a time where, as a little one, that wouldn't be the case. But it's funny, isn't it? How life does change. Yeah. And Yvonne says she doesn't believe you. No way.
No, she's saying
no way going back to exactly.
No way going back to junior high. That awkward.
Yep. And hell no.
No way. I would never. People are like, not even for $1 million. No.
Yeah.
No.
It's hard. It's hard when you're a teenager and young adolescence for sure. Terrence says he used to ride horses and bicycle living on an island.
Yeah.
Okay. And you couldn't pay me to go backwards in life.
I'm down. I'm so down. We were talking about ads for Top Tier TC, which is the community that I run. And I was like, can we do one where I'm riding my horse down the road? You know how like when you guys drive by people, when you see that guy that drives by people and they're in Lamborghinis and he's like, what do you do for a living? Right? I'm like, can we drive by me on my horse on the middle of the day and be like, what do you do for a living? How are you just riding your horse during the middle of the day?
Yeah, really, really. Well, you did choose where, wild hearts can't be broken. And I understand why. I really do. So it's interesting that you went from that to engineering school.
Yeah.
Civil, mechanical,
biomedical. So I was, what's
impressive.
funny is that when I was a junior, I might've been a sophomore. So sophomore year was kind of a transitioning year for me, but in sophomore year, they did a like day in science class where we talked about genetic engineers, and they talked about not redesigning, but like restructuring a human heart from the protein basis of it. So they'd strip away all of the muscle and all of the like actual cellular basics to it and just have a protein skeleton. And then they would grow actual tissue from your stem cells, which I have both of my kids' stem cells saved now. And so I got this really early obsession with like, really, really like cellular development, more so like cell biology. And I got to be really good at math later on in life. So I thought, okay, well, I like science. I like math. Maybe I want to be, I took the oh my gosh, what's that test? That ASVAB test? in high school.
Is that for the military, you mean?
I didn't know it was for the military.
Oh, that's hysterical. You took
So
that
I took
test?
that test, you guys, is junior or senior year of high school. I took the ASVAB test, not knowing it was for the military. I don't know why. I don't know why. So I take this test and it comes out that, you should be an engineer, or you should be in these fields, right? Like, this is what it told me that I should be. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I guess that's what I should, you're in high school. You don't know what you're going to do with your life. Like, I guess that's what I'm going to do. Then shortly afterwards, my mom starts getting phone calls from like the Navy SEALs or like whoever I don't know, not the Navy SEALs, but like the military, right? And they're
That's
like,
funny.
she could get recruited or whatever. And I'm like, I did not even know that's what this was. I had no idea. Melissa says they were required to take it. Maybe I was required to take it. I don't know. It was a long time ago. I don't remember. All I know is that it told me that I should be an engineer. And so I took it and I ran with it. And I was like, wow, this test thinks I'm smart. I should be an engineer, right? And then after 3 years of going through engineering school and getting pregnant in college and deciding I didn't want to go that way anymore, I changed my degree to genetics and I graduated with a degree in genetics. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I guess you got over not thinking of yourself as a good, easy learner. But did you ever work in that area?
I have an interesting story for that, but I think what I want to say about like what I convinced myself is that if you don't just believe that you can do it, even if you have no background in it, I mean, that's how I am here today. So for me, it was like, even though going in engineering school, I took all the basics. Then once like your like high level engineering classes started, I was like, this is not fun. But I just knew that if I just put the effort forth and I just kept going and I just said yes and I just kept going, that it would happen and that it would work. And that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am, is I just kept taking the opportunities and going to the classes and showing up and showing consistency. But then I realized just because you can be an engineer doesn't mean you should be an engineer. Like, I don't really actually think I would have been a happy engineer, somebody that enjoyed my career as an engineer.
Got it.
Because it just doesn't fit my personality type very well, to be honest with you. It's a little too structured for me.
Interesting.
So yeah. So when I changed, I actually got offered a really exclusive research opportunity at the Biodesign Institute there at ASU. So at Arizona State University, they have a Biodesign Institute there that they do vaccine research. The research that I was working on was actually on microRNAs, not mRNAs, but microRNAs. And I worked with a tiny organism called C. elegans. And I used to do, I don't know the long-term form. It's like Serenoboidus elegans or something, which is like a tiny 1 millimeter long worm that we used to inject under microscopes, DNA that we were researching the microRNAs to it. So, and microRNAs, for your guys' knowledge here, they are basically a post-transcriptional regulator that regulates how many proteins are produced based off of that DNA sequence. So they're hairpin sequences that turn on and turn off your development pathway. So basically what I was researching is, why do people get cancer, which is unregulated cell growth? Mm-hmm. And that means there's been a pathway that's been gone back through, right? You're going back to the original unregulated cell growth that you would be in the womb when you get cancer, right? Whether it's of that specific cell. So I really enjoyed that. But what I also realized is, like, I could never be a researcher in a research laboratory every day. Once again, it's too mundane. You have very far and few between like satisfactory moments of like, oh, wow, I have a conclusive thing from my research that I've been doing for the last 5 million years, you know, like very rarely.
Yeah.
You're also heavily regulated by government grants and what the government wants you to be researching. So there's not really a whole bunch of free reign on what you can research. It's all based on like, what the government thinks they should give grants for. And so it really was hard for me to go down that path. So I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't want to necessarily be a genetic researcher. I got a job, interestingly enough, out of college as a assistant chemist in a latex facility out here in Arizona. synthesizing hypoallergenic latex. So really, really
Okay. It's strange how the connections relate a teeny bit, but not that much.
no.
And how you're going from like one pond to another to another.
Mhm.
Wow. So I know that. When did you become a real estate agent? Because I know you're a real estate agent. Was it before you got in with Pace or after?
Yeah. So funny story about my real estate license. I'm actually letting my license go this month, you guys.
Why?
Because you want to know what happens is people
Yeah.
Google me and they find my broker's number and they call my broker. And I haven't sold a house traditionally in so long. So my broker's like, all these people are calling for you. Are you doing deals? And I'm like, not really. Like, I'm not. Like, I have other things that I'm doing and I work with an investor, but I'm not doing deals where I have my license on the line, you know? So I was like, I probably should just, before we get too out there, let's let that go. Cause I don't use it and I don't need it.
Right. Right.
So that's my thing. But anyways, out of college, I got that job as a chemist, and then it was a contracted job. So it wasn't like I got hired on as like a W-2, it was contracted. But then I got pregnant with my second child. I was also simultaneously trying to go to veterinary school because I had decided.
How old were you when you started having your children? Sorry to ask.
I was 20 when I got pregnant with my son, and I was 23 when I got pregnant with my daughter.
Okay. Were you married at that time?
Yeah, I got married at 21.
Okay, that was the same age I got married, but I didn't have my daughter until I was 29.
Oh my gosh.
On purpose. On purpose.
Yeah, you had time to plan. That's what you had time to do. You know what though? People always say like, you know, how wasn't that difficult? And for me, having kids in college is actually like, it was a blessing for me because I think either this accident happens or you get to this stage in your life where you've waited and you feel like you're ready. And then it kind of blows up all of the structure and organization you've created for your life and your career and all this stuff. So then if you get through college and get your career established, now all of a sudden you're going to blow that whole thing up because you're going to have a baby. If you do it in college, which I'm not encouraging anybody to do this either, but if you do like I did, you have to just plan, you know, everything is planned with the baby involved then, you know, like your kids are there. So yeah, it really didn't, it was great for me. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, I honestly would have continued on to veterinary school, but I kept getting discouraged by the vets that I was volunteering for to go to veterinary school because it is so extraordinarily expensive and I would have had to go into debt. And at this point I didn't have any school debt because my parents had paid for my school. And so to think about taking on $300,000 in debt as a new family, now another baby on the way, I really had to think about what my priorities were. And at that point I was like, okay, I need to prioritize my family over my career. And I'm completely okay with that, right? Like I learned a ton about myself, about persevering, about learning, about all kinds of Snapple fact things like I just shared with you guys that nobody cares to ever know about. Like I've got all kinds of knowledge in here that nobody needs. But I feel like I really got a good experience out of that to the point where I was like, okay, what can I do to stay on this path of raising my family? Luckily, my husband's always been a really, really great provider. Like he would have never, like even now to this day, my husband probably thinks I'm crazy for working as much as I do. He's like, why do you even work? Like, I don't know why you want to work so much or why you would choose to work with some, you know, this, like, why don't we just go open all of our own businesses and just run our businesses? But for me, it's all about saying yes and taking in opportunities and learning new things. And just, I feel like I'm just like that hungry caterpillar, just every bit of thing in my life, you know, just like eating everything up. Like that's what I feel like I am. Oh my God. So I don't expect it to make sense to anyone else but me. And that's okay. So I think that when I got out of college, I had to make these super decisions, like super important decisions. And from that, it always comes back to people being like, you should be a real estate agent. And I was like, I mean, okay. But like, I feel like real estate agents just like end up getting murdered. I don't know why. Like in my head, that's what I thought.
No, it's happened. It's happened, unfortunately.
I know. And so I was like, I am already like a criminal podcast junkie where I like to listen to like those types of things and freak myself out in the first place. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to go be a real estate agent and like meet strangers in vacant houses all over the place. You know, like, no, that didn't actually sound that interesting to me. But it sounded interesting from the fact of like, if my friends and family and people I knew wanted to buy houses or sell houses, I could help them. And so that's really what I did. I started helping people that I knew, and then I would be referred from someone I knew to someone else that they knew. I never really had like a marketing campaign to put myself out there. I just decided I was just going to do it on the side. Meanwhile, my husband we sold our house, we moved in with my parents, and we started our first automotive business.
Oh, that must have been an interesting change.
Yeah. 2 kids and a new business. And we actually stayed living with my parents for 5 years before we bought this house that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really, yeah, exactly. God had a plan. Glad it included us. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
So true. I really feel like I got on this path not because I wanted to be a real estate agent or that I like had this passion for real estate or that I wanted to like have financial independence from real estate. Like that wasn't really what I wanted. It was more so I wanted to have something that could supplement my husband's income or the business that my husband and I were running together so that I could continue to be with my kids.
Got it. And I think a lot of realtors do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they think they have the flexibility and it's going to provide PIN money and a little bit more. And that, yeah, I know. I get it. I've not been a realtor, but heard a lot of ladies say, and men say that, you know, that it's not a real full time.
And the IRS doesn't like that, guys, just so you know. Like, they don't want you to be just like a part-time realtor. It's really hard when it comes down to doing your taxes at the end of the year because you're like, are you a real estate professional or are you not a real estate professional? It's a hard balance for sure.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. So now I know that you went to work with Jean Garino. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the Do Good and Do Well. For the residential assistance area.
Yeah.
How did you get that job? And let's go from there. What did you learn or like there?
Gosh, these are such good questions. You're such a good interviewer. So
I have a great person to interview, man.
You're doing so great. Like these are such great questions. So when my husband and we started that automotive business in 2014. And then in 2019, the person that we were renting our business from had trouble with the IRS, or not our business, but our building from.
Oh,
had some trouble with the IRS, and we got a 3-day notice to move out on a Monday.
Why? I mean,
because what we were being told, there's a whole story ahead of it, but what we were being told wasn't true, and whatever issues were there weren't being resolved on the other person's side. And so when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, we've put probably definitely all of our savings. You know, we sold our house. Every single bit of money we had gone into this building to set it up to where it was. But I was like, we're going to figure this out. Luckily, I had property. I'm still in the house that I was in then. And so I ordered a semi truck that same day. I said, hey, come drop a trailer off to me. And we loaded up our entire 10,000 square foot shop minus like a few odds and ends things within 3 days and moved everything back home to where we are right now. And it didn't really financially affect us. It wasn't anything that was like horrible for us, but it was like a huge moment of like, do we go find a new building and go put all that money into a new building? And at this time, I didn't have all the connections I have now. I didn't know all the things I know about real estate or about negotiating or about anything. Like now I think like if someone would have come to me with a 3-day notice, I would have said, how do I buy this building? You know, like that, if that would have happened now, you know?
Yeah.
And so it is really, really frustrating to like, feel like, gosh, I wish I knew now. I knew then what I know now. But here's the thing. All of this is meant to be in my eyes. Right. So from that, I had people like always, I mean, the same story with Pace. I had people recognize my value from outside and say, hey, I have an opportunity. And I actually turned that opportunity down at least once, maybe even twice. I was offered that opportunity to go work for Rolla. And I was like, I don't know anything about assisted living. I have no idea why I would go do this. And I thought that I needed to go work at an office and that it was going to be a 9 to 5. The second I found out it was like a work from home opportunity, I was like,
cool.
okay. I mean, I can jam with that. I'm all right with that, you know? So I tried it out. I was there for 3 years. I helped plan their national conventions all 3 of those years. If you guys go look at the Residential Assisted Living Academy's website, you'll see interviews from me with other students there on their website for testimonials. It was a really fun 3 years. I knew it wasn't going to be where I was going to be forever. But once again, I made some really great connections. It was another great stepping stone in a direction forward. And that's
And it let you work at home.
And they let me work from home, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I got connected with Pace, basically, is because people knew what I did for Jean. And when Jean passed away, unfortunately, in 2021, within a month, I had less than a month, within a week, I had multiple job offers from people who had worked with me. And for me, it's always so flattering, right? It's one of those things. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. I mean, for goodness sake, holy smokes, you know, like, and when Pace had called me because he was recommended to me, I was like, you know, I have like 2 or 3 other people to talk to that I actually know. I don't know you. I don't, you know, and like, I don't really know any of this. Like all of this sounds really fast and really weird. I don't know. It's so weird. What the heck is SubTo? You know, like so weird.
So I have to ask you to explain this, because we know why Pace wanted you to come to work for him. Mm-hmm. But given you had other people that you knew and you didn't know SubTo, what made you decide to want to work for him or to even agree?
You know, I had this gal and I still love her to this day. And she still checks in with me all the time, who I actually was really, really considering going and working for her. This was 2021 that I'm talking about this story right now, Anthony. Before, when I closed my shop, was 2019. And then I worked at that place for 3 years. So 2021 is when I was being introduced to Pace. So this gal, her name is, gosh, I haven't talked to her in a long time, but she's the sweetest person ever. Anyway, she runs a marketing agency for assisted living homes. She came from the big box industry. Then she met us. I kind of integrated her into the webinars and the promotions that I was doing within the academy. And she then, you know, her and I became close friends. So then when everything went down and Jean passed away and they like dissolved the association I was working for, I got contacted by her and she's like, do you want to be my operator? Do you want to be my COO? Mind you, I didn't have that high level of a position at Jean's place. I was an executive director of an association. I wasn't his operator. I wasn't really, you know, like he had family in those positions, those C-level positions. And so I always say I really wasn't given the chance to spread my wings. Jean always used to call me his stallion. Like I would just go take care of things and like whatever. Like it was so funny how he was with me, but yet I never really had the opportunity to spread my wings there, probably like I could have. And you know, I basically found out that she wanted to hire me, and I was like, you know, I don't really know anything about marketing, and although that doesn't intimidate me because obviously I take jobs that I don't know stuff about. I just don't know if I want to stay in this same industry, right? Like this is my opportunity to change directions because I knew I wasn't probably in the right industry. It wasn't fulfilling or like interesting really to me that much. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, let's see what else there is. I actually wasn't going to get a job at all because it was the holidays. Pace called me the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
So I wasn't.
Most companies won't hire around then.
Well, I don't think she was going to. She said she was going to wait till February. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, you know, like we'll continue to talk and keep in touch. If I don't find something or if I, you know, make my decision between then, it is what it is. I didn't need to. Once again, I didn't need to take this job with Pace. I don't need to have a job right now, right? Like none of this is a need for me. Everything I do is out of wanting to do what I do.
I love it.
And it's not coming from a perspective of like, I don't need money. Like, of course, everybody needs money to survive. But I think my mindset is I could earn money doing anything. I consider myself a chameleon, and I know people think that's weird, like that's a bad thing, like people who just like accommodate for the environments they're in. But I see it as a good thing in that, like, I could go into any environment and learn anything and be great at it in 6 months or less.
I hear you.
I don't care what it is. So when I went from meeting her and her offering me that job and then having Pace come to the table, it was more so like, this is a thing I'm not sure about. You sound kind of crazy, but a little bit cool. And I think I want to see what this is about, you know? And so I think it was more a curiosity thing than anything.
Yeah.
It was more so like, I'll try it. You know, I didn't really like ask for anything. I didn't ask for like a certain salary. I didn't because I was sort of being like, I'm not going to ask for anything because I might leave you. You know? So I don't want to be rude. So like you kind of, whatever your position is hiring for is cool with me. But like, of course I had like I wouldn't have worked for nothing, but like I wasn't also asking for a 6-figure a year salary right off the bat, you know? So I was more so being like, let's see what this brings. This crazy dude coming into my life with this weird name that I've never heard of. And so you want to know one of the first questions he asked me? He had texted me first. And then I said, yeah, I mean, I'm open to having a conversation. I'll send you my resume. And he says, I won't read it, but my partner will. So I sent him my resume. And then he calls me. This is the same night. He calls me and we get to talking and he goes, you sound like a nice Mormon mom. And I was like, first of all, that is not politically correct. When you're hiring somebody, you should not talk about religion or whether they have kids. You are so far out of bounds. Like, you should not be doing hiring. You right? and second of all, no, I'm not that, right? But then I thought, why does he think that? You know, so for me, I was like, why does he think that? And a lot of what he was saying reminded me of Gene, because Gene was so off the cuff, like would say random stuff. And like, you'd be like, Gene, you know, like, don't say that. And so he goes, you sound like a nice Mormon mom. And I was like, I'm not, but thank you. But in my head, I was like, he either wants me to be Mormon because he's Mormon, or he doesn't want me to be Mormon. And I was like, maybe he looked at my address because I live right in the middle of Gilbert. So like an area where there's like one of the more big Mormon temples and like very, very high, like most of my neighbors are Mormon. And so, I mean, I have no problem. Most of the girls that work for me now are Mormon or have been Mormon or something, right? But I just was like, you're random. But
that didn't make you work for him, did it? I mean, that didn't make you, or did it make you more curious?
But it made me curious. Like, who is this random guy that is so politically incorrect? You know, like, what is this thing going on here? You know, so I was curious. Now, I probably should have listened to my instincts from my criminal, like, podcast, because the very next day he was like, you should come to my house for a meeting with me and my partner. And I was like, sure, let's go. You know, like, just like, what?
You ask him, are there going to be any other people there?
And if you know anything about Pace's address, it's a unit number. And so I was like, does this dude live in an apartment, like, or a condo or something? You know? And so then I had to look up, like, my first instinct was like, this is so weird, right? So I look at the address and I'm like, oh, it's definitely not. It's like a very nice neighborhood, but like, for whatever reason, they're unit numbers in that area. And so, but my first thought was, this guy lives in an apartment and he's telling me to come over and meet his business partner in an apartment. It was really funny. So now when I think back about all of those first instinctual thoughts I have, it's so funny.
I think it's hysterical. It's hysterical. So you decided to just commit, or just went on a trial, or what? How did it go? Because, you know, you are so integral to his business and to our community. I'm kind of curious as to how it went from that to where you are now, because here you are, you're at the beginning of something that is, we'll get into in a minute, but is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And guys, what I can say is that I have leaned in to the unknown. That's pretty much what I do, right? I just lean in and I just let stuff happen. And if it resists or it has something that I feel like I'm getting a roadblock from, I discover why I have that, right? But most of the time I just, the opportunities come in and I don't want that door to shut. And so I want to just peek in at least, right? So I was peeking in this door by going to this meeting and seeing, hey, like, what is this about? When I got hired, I actually got hired to run American Home Offers, which was their wholesale business.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And so it was kind of dying, I will say. and it was
Wait, it was kind of dying.
Dying. I'm like, what do I say that's like nice here? It was on its last leg, right? And that was a good line, wasn't it, Sabrina? Lean into the unknown. Yeah, for real. So I got these weird random lines in my head, right? They work out sometimes. So anyways, I took that meeting knowing I knew jack shit about wholesaling. Sorry, excuse my language. I knew nothing about wholesaling, right?
What the heck's wrong with that?
And so for me, it was like, okay, I know that wholesalers are bad in the real estate world, right?
Bad.
Yeah, they're like the shady, creepy guys that hang out behind the dumpsters. Like those are the wholesalers of the world. That was what I thought.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's what I thought as a traditional real estate agent. Like I had this like inside my head, like, oh, they're all brokering transactions without licenses. Oh, like they were like so bad. And so once I kind of jumped into this space and saw exactly what was happening, I will say it was scary for me because like when I first started doing it, I don't know if you've ever been like the bullpen of like a wholesale office like Keegley or something, and they have like the stuff written on the wall and they've got like leads they're working and they've got like multiple people making hundreds of phone calls a day, and then they're like, I got one, and you get it under contract, and then like you have to put EMD in, and then for me the whole time I'm like, okay, when does EMD go hard, which is totally TC stuff, but I didn't realize I was doing TC stuff because I'm like, I don't want them to lose money. I don't care if it's $500 or $100, we're not losing that money, right? So then we'd get to like a day or two before the EMD was going to go hard. And if we didn't have an end buyer for it, I'd be like, cancel, please cancel right now. I'm down, don't lose the money. Like I had zero risk tolerance.
Oh, I love it. I'm sorry, that's hysterical.
I was the wrong person, definitely the wrong person to hire for the wholesale business. And let alone like it was kind of on its last leg anyways, because of another partner that they had in the deal. And I know Pace has talked about this story, so I won't rehash it, but they very quickly decided it really wasn't going to, like, okay, we made an effort, right? It's not going to work out. And so in that time, I was like, okay, I got to find value because now I actually like these people. And I sort of think I want to stay, right? Not only that, I am an achiever. What you'll know about me, and that's one of my number one strengths on my Clifton Strengths test, is achiever. And so I felt sort of like I had failed at the wholesale business thing.
Oh,
and that's okay. I mean, honestly, like it was probably not destined to work out anyways. And so I felt bad in a way. I felt like I needed to show my value in another way. And so I started really diving into like how to optimize his fix and flips that they were doing at the time, how to optimize the rental portfolio, how to get into the things that I felt comfortable looking over, because I had a traditional real estate license and I felt like that was a safe space for me, And as Pace one time was like, why is Molly focusing so much on the portfolio? And so he called me and I was like, well, I feel like I can fix all of the problems that we have here, like the optimization stuff and the process things that we have going on over here. I feel like I can fix it. And he was like, okay, well, you want problems to fix, basically. How about you come over here and help me with some things? And that was when I got introduced to my first transaction.
Oh, cool.
And that was a Texas transaction that had been in escrow for like 2 or 3 months.
Ooh.
And it was a pre-foreclosure. So I'm surprised it didn't go to foreclosure at that point. It was just,
I was going to say it.
It was just accruing fees and accruing fees and accruing fees. And at that point it had doubled. The entry fee had probably doubled. And meanwhile, it was a creative transaction. So for me, I was like super overwhelmed by the amount of paperwork that there was going to be. I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these authorizations and these powers of attorney. And like, should we even be filling out a power of attorney? Like, Shouldn't I have an attorney do that? And all these things, like bouncing back and forth between my traditional real estate brain and like trying to be on board with what I know everybody's doing over here, right? And being like, I'm cool, I can hang, I can do all these things you're doing, right? Even though I'm worried that they might be illegal. Like all of these things in my head all the time. And once I started just doing them, mind you, I canceled that transaction because it was too much. The entry fee had doubled and it was just too much. Like I wasn't going to be able to handle that as my first transaction. And so I canceled it. Everybody was really upset with me. This was the first time that I've probably made people upset. I think I probably regularly make people upset now because Pace will tell them no, yes, and I'll tell them no.
No. They just know that whoever said yes didn't know what they were talking about.
Yes. So once I started diving into the other transactions that Pace was working on, mind you, there was nobody really taking ownership of them. It was still how it is now, where Pace would be like, I want to buy that deal from you. But then he would expect that this was before transaction coordinating was like a thing within SubTo. Mm-hmm. So he would expect the person that he was buying the deal from to push it along and get it to closing and to just tell him when things were wrong or tell him when things didn't go as planned. But he didn't have anybody in his court saying, hey, they're going to tell you it's all flowers. Yeah, they're going to tell you it's all rainbows and flowers. But your TC, like me, coming into play, I'm going to tell you, actually, something's wrong here and we shouldn't close on this deal, right? So once I started doing that, and the more attorneys that I got involved with, and the more title agents that I worked with, and the more, either I ran into people who were like so anti-creative, or I ran into people who were like, oh yeah, we could do this, or they were so extra creative and they were also attorneys. I realized like, this is like politics. Right? You got a 50-50 chance of what you're going to run into depending on who you're working with and depending on their own experiences and their own opinions on the matter, right? And so as I educated myself, once again, my caterpillar, I'm just out there eating up education. I realized like all of the worries and concerns that I had were very easily mitigated by playing within what I've learned as a safe space. And so now I feel like with Top Tier and what we've created in this TC community is a safe space for transaction coordinators to work, where you're not stepping on the toes of real estate agents and making them feel uncomfortable. And you're not stepping on the toes of closing attorneys or title companies and making them feel uncomfortable. Whereas investors on their own do that all the time, right? I see investors in the SubTo group be like, why is this agent acting like this? Why won't they let me talk to their client directly? All this stuff, because they don't know the common rules within the space. And same with closing attorneys or attorneys. Like, I don't understand. This attorney just blew up my deal for XYZ. Yeah. That kind of stuff is going to happen less and less often with top tier TCs on board.
Right.
Because they know where their boundaries are and how to respect the licensed or professionals that have degrees in what they're doing and allow them to guide conversations and then just give experience-based understandings of what they think might work in the scenario. So there's been plenty of times where I've worked with attorneys and I've said, hey, I saw another attorney do this. Is this something that's possible in this state that you're in? And then they look and they chew it over for a while and they come back and they go, I can't exactly do that, but here's what we think we could do, right? And without a TC that understands those things, so somebody who's been educated in this specific space, you really set yourself up for failure, not only as an investor without a TC who hasn't done a lot of deals, but as an investor who's trying to like branch out and scale in a way that they've never scaled before, without having somebody on your team to be like, this is going well or this is not going well, you will see no growth. And I saw that directly in Pace's portfolio, because within a year he grew by over 1,000 doors.
Yes, absolutely. And it does seem like the liaison between the parties ends up being the peacemaker and the guardian, of making sure that everything does go well.
But the guardian of time too, everybody's time, the closing attorney's time, the title company's time, the investor's time, the buyer side, the seller's time, everybody's time is being like held with the TC. The TC is like, I'm going to take on as much as I can within legal boundaries, right? And then I'm going to make sure if there's a problem, I help come up with solutions with the licensed parties involved, attorneys, agents, whoever it may be. And then I'm going to come back to my client and say, here's the research I've done. Let's talk about what to do next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without being threatening in any way, they tend to be, one of the things I have to say is I think that as the TC leader, you are the perfect example because you do stay cool all the time. How do you do that?
You guys, this is one of those things that this is part of childhood too. I grew up with a dad that was, I wouldn't say a hothead because my dad's actually really super sweet, but he's like a really big guy with a really loud voice. Like he probably should have been in radio or something. And really big guy. He was a lineman for ASU. He weighed over 300 pounds. He's 6'3", like big.
Wow.
Guy. So he was one of those people that was like, if something happened at the bank, he would like yell at somebody at the bank, or like he would throw a fit, or like, if there was too repetitive of a song, he would like change the song and like, like, and so I always grew up like, oh, I need to be like a peacemaker sort of, but it also numbed me to that behavior. So when people throw fits now, I don't have any reaction to it because I know that it's them, not me, right? It's them, not me. And I had to learn that through modeling, I guess, as a kid, right? To the point where nowadays, if my dad were to throw a fit, which hasn't happened in years, I would have said, are you done? Can we have a real conversation, right? Do you need a break so that we can come back and actually have thought process? Yeah. And I also listen to a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of things that accelerate my understanding of the human behavior. And so one of the things that I recently heard on a podcast from Brene Brown was that when we're in that reactive mentality, whether it's a client, so those of you that are TCs listening right now, whether it's a client that you have that's being overreactive or another team member that's being overreactive, the body is in a fight or flight state, right? You're in this state where it's physically impossible for you to have a reasonable thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, your brain doesn't have the blood flow to the portion of your brain that has thought processing going on. It's just all in the back of your brain of like fight, flight, run, fight these people, get away from this saber-toothed tiger, right?
Yeah.
And
or hide, be quiet.
Yeah, or shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, shut down, right?
Yep.
And it's to protect yourself. And so the best thing to do in those scenarios, and I tell my TCs this, and Sabrina, you may have heard me say this, I do a hold. So if I feel things are going astray, or people are getting intense, or if people put pressure on me to close something sooner or do something sooner, I'm going to hold. I'm going to back up from you. And that actually might make it worse at first, right? It might make people feel worse, but what it's going to do for me is it's going to allow me to think with my rational side of my brain without emotions involved so that I can make the correct decision for this scenario. Yeah. And it has never failed me. Never once has it ever failed me.
Oh, that's very good. That's very good. Yeah. And very helpful too, because sometimes you do get people that go off, in these situations, and how do you handle it?
Yeah. Yeah. I also, going back to being an achiever, I love sort of when people get mad about things. I don't know why, because I feel like it is so satisfactory when you get to the end of that argument and everybody's on the same page again. So, and it won't always happen, right? You have sociopaths and narcissists out there that won't allow for those types of conversations, but I won't even engage. I already know that personality type. So I'm not even going to engage in that type of conversation. But if I feel like we're able to have a rational conversation and we can talk this out, even if you're in an emotional state in the beginning. And I'll give this example. When I worked for Rala, I used to do a weekly newsletter. And that newsletter one week included a research study from a researcher that I loved and adored, and I worked with him often, that was doing research on Alzheimer's. And it's Dr. Dale Bredesen. If anybody you know Dale Bredesen, I actually worked directly with him. And he does research on the reversal of Alzheimer's. His first book is called The End of Alzheimer's. And then his second book is called The First Survivors of Alzheimer's, because he actually has people who reversed their cognitive decline.
Wow.
And it's all based off of diet and supplementation.
Wow.
It has nothing to do with all of these expensive medications, all this stuff, right? Something that I held near and dear to my heart. So I had this article that I was so proud of. It was such a good article. It was about his 9-month study that he did with all these people in a small assisted living care home. So it pertained to my industry, right? And that very same day that I released that newsletter, I didn't know it, but a drug had been released for Alzheimer's that same day, and it had been promoted other places, right? So then I get a phone call from a very angry lady. Like, she's so mad about this article I put out, and that I can't believe that you would even consider putting an article about this, like da, 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 da. And I already knew from things she was saying that she wasn't talking about my article, because she was talking about a medication. She was talking about no trial, a 20% success rate, all this stuff that had not, I mean, our trial that had a 85% success rate. Wow. So I was like, okay. So I let her yell basically for like 30, 45 minutes. I just sat and listened to her. And then when she got done, I said, did you read the article? And she goes, I didn't need to read the article. And I said, I'm going to hold you 1 second. I'm going to open the article and I'm going to read just the first paragraph to you. And so I read it to her and I said, you know, I love that you're so passionate about this, because I am too. And this article actually is the opposite of that. And I think you would actually really, really enjoy it. And I 100% agree with everything you're saying right now.
Wow.
Everything you're saying, I agree. And I was like, this is what's wrong with our world, right? Something that has a 20% success rate is now being put to market at, I think it was like $18,000 a year cost. Extraordinary amount of money.
It's about the money,
right? Whereas you can go and change your diet, take trigger foods out, take supplements that increase your cognitive abilities, and reverse, like people with MICO scores. I don't know if you know anything about the MICO score system, but there's a scoring system based off of your cognition. And you either, a normal person like you or I is probably at like mid-20s, 25 to 28, something like that, right? Whereas somebody, and don't quote me directly, it's something like that, but somebody with the inability to like help themselves, they can't feed themselves, they can't use the restroom on their own, maybe they can't walk on their own, they're under a 10 MICO score. So they took people who were, and Jeremy's correct, quit sugar. So they took people who were in like a 18 to 19 MICO score, so significantly decreased, somewhere in between like completely probably not reversible to they still need to be in assisted living of some kind, right?
Right.
And in 9 months, some of these people came out of assisted living. Some people, so like went back to a perfect MICO score. Some of these people went to just a mid higher, like a significant increase in their ability. And so, yeah, seriously, I'm going to try not to bring up anything that causes any discomfort, but I work directly with Dr. Bredesen, and I know for a fact he comes from the traditional world where he's been scrutinized, right, by his peers who are just like drug pushers, right? And it's just like, I saw drugs. And it's unfortunate. But for me, what I've learned from that is like the conflict that comes from these things doesn't mean that you have to disagree, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be, it means that you can educate each other and that you can come together from a conclusion, even if your conclusion is we're going to agree to disagree. I actually enjoy that, right? I'm somebody that likes to push through a conversation. And I've had to learn the hold tactic, because usually me, it would be just drive right through the argument and just keep going until it has an end. And that's not always the best case either, you know?
Gotcha. That's amazing. It really is amazing to see, you know, the sort of stuff that you have gone through, and also your logic, like why you're so cool and how you stay so cool. I love it. I love it. Are you happy with Top Tier? Are you happy with the fact that you're now becoming a mentor?
You know, it's hard for me, you guys. I don't want Pace's life, right? I never, for me, the need for top tier came from, I saw a void, right? There was a void within these communities where people who just didn't fit in a lending category or an investor category, they didn't really have a space. And that meant that the people who were the detail oriented, behind the scenes organizers of the world didn't have a voice. And so I more so do this to bring highlight to those people. I think that administrative professionals get discounted on a regular basis. People don't value an administrative professional, and I see it even today even in our groups, right? I think that people sometimes devalue them because they don't understand what value they can bring to them.
Right.
So instead of trying it and seeing where they can go, they just say, why would I pay $1,000 for a transaction coordinator?
Very short-sighted.
Yeah, it's very, very short-sighted.
And so bad, then they'll know.
But I feel like I'm an advocate for my students, right? I don't feel like I want to go out there and like have a million people following me on YouTube. I don't even want to be recognized when I go out. Like, I don't even really have a presence on social media. Those of you that have tried to like interact with me on social media, it'll be days before you get a response. You're better off emailing me, right? I told Effie that before this. She's like, how do people get hold of you? And I'm like, just send me an email because I'm always working, right? So I really don't. I love the community. I love being able to be a voice for people who maybe haven't had a voice or felt like they haven't been valued in the position that they're in. And so I love that part about it. It is very uncomfortable for me to like think about doing ads or YouTube content or a podcast. That's why I was like, Effie, you're doing such a great job. Like all of this stuff, although it seems like it comes easy to me, it is not something I naturally tend to do or want to do usually, you know?
So again, you're just saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think we're so, so darn lucky. Oh, wait, I can't say this because it's something maybe Pace will see sometime. He's probably heard it. Heck, if I had to choose, you know who I would choose. I mean, I'd want Pace and Molly. Okay, yeah. I'd want Pace and Molly. But
I tell people
there you have it.
I still teach creative finance, right? I just teach creative finance from a different perspective, right? Yeah. I don't teach it from a lead management, disposition, all of that stuff, which is so necessary in an investor's world. I teach it from a background view of like why we do the things we do and how these processes have developed over time and how I'm helping with the attorneys that Pace so graciously pays for to improve upon the processes that we have to do this, right?
Yep. Well, we have a question, so I have to ask it. How are the horses?
They are so, so good. I have 2 girl horses and a boy horse, and my boy horse is the youngest horse, and he is always messing with my husband's horse. And so right now he has like bite marks all over his face and his like neck and all over the place because he goes and messes with her and then she beats him up. And I'm like, it's your fault that you do this. So they're great, but they're naughty and they do silly things. And yesterday they were running around like idiots out here and almost running into fences over nothing. I was like trying to find what they were so scared of, and they were going crazy running around. I'm like, what is wrong with you? What the heck? So
that's hysterical. I'm so happy for you that you have them and that you can see them. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a pretty cool thing to be that close to nature and, you know, and to them. And they're learning how to socialize, she says. Yes. Let's get Pace a horse. Oh, we should.
Well, Julie, I'd have to figure out who's going to take care of it in the negative 30-degree weather that Montana is having right now. Like, I think about that. I'm just like, it would be so beautiful to have horses out there in the summertime, but the wintertime, I would just, I don't know. Yeah. How do you even have a horse in negative 30-degree weather, Julie?
Yeah. I don't know. Julie, you got an answer? She says they're fun. Yeah, they are fun. But I would really worry too about, you know, the cold for sure. But,
you know, and Terrence makes a good point. He says horses' emotions are interesting to witness, you know, and I think that's another thing that's taught me how to be calm, cool, and collected, Effie. In that, like, and I want to tell this story really quick because it's something that's impacted me. I have a horse trainer that I follow who also is very much so with it as far as like emotional training of his self goes, because you, like people have always said, your emotions kind of relay to animals, especially horses.
Yep.
And you know, when people watch Avatar and those, they like connect themselves into the horse before they get on. That's really pretty much what it's like every time you get on a horse, right? All of your emotions are relayed to them. And so what I've learned from watching other horse trainers and from my own experiences is that like you have to really watch even your thoughts, not just like the way you behave or the way you're outwardly behaving or acting, because you could be outwardly behaving happy or whatever. But if you know in your mind, in your head, that you're thinking this horse is going to act up and that you're going to have problems with it, you're going to have problems, right? Because you're already setting yourself up for that. And it doesn't even have anything to do with how you outwardly act. And so this trainer that his name's Warwick Schiller. He's from, I think, Australia or New Zealand or something. But he talks about people would come to his coaching sessions, right? Because he's basically a mentor for training horses. And they would say, all I do is hand my horse to you and my horse acts different, right? Like all I did, what did you do? What is this magic voodoo? And he's like, I don't have any predisposed emotions about this horse. I know nothing. I don't know its story. I don't know how it's acted in the past. I don't know anything. So I'm not vomiting that all over this horse the second I see it, you know? And because of that, they act different. They act different right away. And so he talks about how you can't have those judgments in your head. You can't have a predisposed judgment about any situation because you're setting yourself up for failure right away. And so he also talked about how he was consciously thinking about his judgmental thoughts outside of the arena, right? So he knows not to do it with horses, but we all have those judgmental thoughts, whether you're driving on the road and someone cuts you off and you're like, oh, mother, you got in my lane, you know, or whatever it is.
What the effie are you doing?
What the effie? You know, all this stuff, those judgmental thoughts are negatively affecting you and your own health. And so he's like, I did this exercise where I put a handful of pebbles in one, or like marbles or whatever it is, in one pocket. Every time I had a negative thought or a judgmental thought, I transferred one of those pebbles to the other pocket. He goes, I ran out of pebbles about halfway through the day. And I realized that I was doing so much detriment to my own well-being and my own health. And so he's like, I then started consciously having the opposing thought. Anytime I would have a judgmental thought, I would put a positive thought onto that process. And he goes, and what I found is that I slowly, because I consciously was aware of it, reduced the amount of judgmental thoughts I had on a daily basis. And that's been something that's really, really helped me to stay calm. And I mean, like I've trained young horses, which if anybody here is familiar with training young horses, it can be scary, right? They want to clobber you they're giant 1,000-pound animals that are just like scared. And so my baby horse just thought he needed to crawl up on top of me every time he got scared of something. And I'm like, no, we can't, please don't step on top of me. Right. But if I sat there in that moment and just breathe and my body language gives off and I don't have any judgments about him and I understand where he's coming from, just like I can do with clients or anybody else in this world, then everything can be better. Right. We can zen this out. So that's a lot
You're one of the most zen people I've met, man. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, well, I'd like to say thank you very, very much. Do me the favor of hanging on afterwards for 1 second.
Sure.
But I'd like to say thank you to everybody for coming. And thank you so, so much for letting us have a glance into your life.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly, so much. I'd like to have you back at some point.
Let's do it. I'm down. Let's do it. Let's talk about like a different concept. I'd love to talk about something like an actual concept or something, or like a book club. Let's read a book and talk about.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week.